Hi, this is Victor Gamov with Confluent, and in these lessons I will show you how you can use Spring Boot and Spring Kafka project to send messages to Confluent Cloud. Let's get to it. In our previous lesson, I showed you how you can create a new project using start.spring.io and how you can configure this project to connect to Confluent Cloud. We already will be using the same thing that we used on the previous lesson, so we're not going to be repeating ourselves again. If you missed that part, please come back and refresh your knowledge, how you can start a new project and what kind of dependencies you need in this application. Speaking about dependencies, in order to make this exercise a little bit more interesting, instead of just sending some of the random hello world messages, I will be using a library called Java Faker that generates some of the relatively realistic data. In our particular case, we're going to be using some predefined generators to send those messages in a Kafka topic. So I'm going into my dependency sections and I'm going here and saying you can always find this information in a GitHub. Java Faker has GitHub project located here. You can find the link in the description below. And if you're using Maven, you can find the way how we can set up the Maven. In my particular case, I'm using Gradle. So in this case, I will be using this configuration to add to my this as a dependency. I added here, refreshed my Gradle configuration, and now I want to start using Spring Boot libraries to produce and send some messages to Kafka. Let's create a class called producer. And to send message in the Kafka topic, we're going to be using a component called Kafka Template. I already explained the ways how you can configure the Kafka templates and what kind of methods available there. So here I will show you how we can use it. So let's start with this Kafka template. Call it templates. In this case, we're going to be sending messages with some integer key and string value. So we're going to be using these types here. Now, I'm going to make this private, and I'm going to make it final. This is where my Lombok comes handy, that will allow us to generate a required arguments constructor. So in this case, I don't need to create this manually. Dependency injection in general, it's good to use with constructor dependency injection or property dependency injection. Do not use like a field dependency injection that will require some additional magic in order to access those fields. So in this particular case, this Kafka template will be injected by Spring and configured by Spring Boot, and it will be injected in my code. I'm gonna be using this Java Faker class. Public void generate. So in this case, I need to send the message, say, every second, and this message will contain some of the interesting data. In my particular case, I want to be using some of the predefined Faker generators, faker.hobbit and quotes. So we're going to be using some of the quotes from book about Hobbit. So we're going to be using this to push it into Kafka topic. Let's create instance of this faker. We'd say faker.instance. That's what we're going to be using today. Next thing is that we need to create a code that will be randomly methods of the faker in a regular basis. In this case, we're going to be using a little bit of reactive programming. We're going to be using this component called Flux that allows us to generate message every second. Flux interval duration of millis. In this particular case, we're gonna do 1000 millis, and it's gonna be 1 second. We're gonna use this as a var. We just call it the interval. Next thing is to have our faker to generate our message, we're going to be using another method from our Flux called flux.fromStream stream.generate, and it's going to be using new supplier function that will generate our string, and we're going to be implementing method on the supplier. In this particular case, we're going to say faker hobbit quote. So in this case, it will invoke this. Let's clean up this code. Looks nice. We'll say it's just a flux, or let's even call it quotes. Now, in order to combine those two fluxes, we need to use method flux.zip. So we will use this one. First one is the interval. Second one is quotes. And we will apply method map that will finally, we will invoke this method in our producer code. This receive a tuple as a parameter, so because it has some elements from first flux and some elements from another flux. For this, we're gonna be implement method apply. I'll call it, and as a result, so what we want to do in this method? In this method, we want to use our template, send message to topic, hobbit. Our key is going to be something that a faker can give us. For example, faker random next integer with some 42 is a always good random number. And the next thing is that we're gonna get this IT. It's gonna be our string. That's something that was generated by this flux. And in order to this code to work, I'll just do block last. I don't want this code to go away. I want this code to run indefinitely. And essentially, we also don't need information about type. So the Java smart enough to understand this. Now, how this code will be invoked? We're going to be using this event listener annotation from Spring. And when these applications, my Spring Boot application will be started, this code will be invoked. In order to make this work as well, I need to make this as a constructor. Component, I'm sorry. And that would be it. So we need to do a few more things here in our application. So we do have a connection to our Confluent cloud. So the next thing we need to tell what kind of data we will be sending this. Generally, Kafka don't care what kind of data you're storing this, but since it's a Java application generally cares what kind of objects you want to send. And in order to turn these objects into a stream of bytes, we need to specify what? We need to specify serializer, of course. So Kafka producer key serializer. So since we're producing this data in integer format, we need to specify this org Apache Kafka Kafka common serialization, and it's going to be integer serializer. For Kafka producer value serializer, we will need to specify org Apache Kafka common serialization string serializer. So next thing is that we mentioned this topic called Hobbit, but we need to create this. For that, we need to go in our Confluent Cloud. On the previous steps of this tutorial, of this lesson, we created this Spring Kafka cluster here. So in this case, I'm going here inside the topic and go in here, create this topic, Hobbit, and I will create this with defaults. In the future lessons, I'll show you how you can use a programmatic approach to create those topics when your application needs this. But for this example, it's okay to create this manually. I will open this window and keep this open while my application will be up and running. Now, so in this case, what I need to do here is just run this application. It will be compiled and up and running. My producer will connect. See, this is properties from my producer. My producer will be connected to Confluent Cloud. Everything's working fine. It's gonna be using the integer serializer for a key. And for the value, it's gonna be string serializer as well. As you can see, all these messages are consumed by Confluent Cloud UI, and you can see all those messages arriving here nicely. However, sometimes you want to use, or sometimes, like most of the times, you want to use programmatic approach to consume those messages. In the next lesson, I will show you how we can use Kafka Listener to consume those messages from a Kafka topic programmatically.